Hello, Mustang fans, and welcome to the Mustang Owners Podcast. I'm John Clore, Enthusiast Communications Manager for Ford Performance, along with my co-host, Mike Ray, who's president of the Mustang Owners Club of Southeastern Michigan, or MOXM, and the International Council of Mustang Clubs. And for you Bronco fans, he's also president of BOXM, the Bronco Owners Club of Southeastern Michigan. Apparently, Mike, you just don't have enough to do. I don't know.
Never. That's why we started a podcast.
I know, that's right. We've long said that everyone has a Mustang story, so that's why we work to bring you the inside stories behind all the cool cars, the clubs, the collectors, the celebrities, and the characters in this Mustang and Ford world of ours. And all that we ask in return is that please make sure you're subscribed to the Mustang Owners Podcast so that you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. And now you can check us out on YouTube. And Mike, when we talk about Mustang stories, there can be no better guy that we're going to be talking about tonight who's got probably the most incredible Ford Mustang story that we could do a whole book on. Hau Thai-Tang. I mean, how lucky are we to have him tonight?
Yeah, one of the Mustang heroes joining us tonight. We can never ask for more.
So Hau Thai-Tang, thank you so much for taking time out and sharing your time with us tonight on the Mustang Owners Podcast.
John, thank you and Mike for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on here to talk Mustang with you guys.
Well, listen, Hau, I know that you probably got tired of saying it all your career. And, for those who don't know the Hau Thai-Tang name, then you're really not paying attention. Hau wrote the foreword of my first Mustang book, and we've got so many great stories to share tonight. But Hau, we're going to trace that back. I mean, the S197 was a heck of a program that you got out, and it got Mike and I both back involved with the product, and that's what people on the podcast are going to know about. But after that, I remember you became director of SVT and advanced product creation after John Coletti left, and then you became VP of engineering for global product development. What a job that was. I mean, the Neil Russlers of the world will thank you for your efforts there. And then you became executive vice president and chief industrial officer for all the industrial platforms and programs through Ford Motor Company. I mean, that's everything that Ford did. And then in purchasing as well, which was a whole other, I mean, that's not a job for one person, How that's a job for 17 people. And then before you left Ford, now just being on the board of Bose, you probably have so much time on your hands. You're thinking, how come I'm not doing 45 jobs at once? What happened, Hau?
It is nice to have a little bit more free time. I'm learning how to play pickleball.
Oh,
You're not
wow.
really retired until you try pickleball. And then I in addition to Bose, I'm also on the board of Borg Warner.
Oh, wow.
Well, with your resume, any board of directors of any company, automotive or not, would be very, very wise to have you there, Hau, because we know firsthand after working with you at Ford Motor Company just what you can accomplish. And that's what we want to talk a little bit about today. Taking over S197 from Art Hyde and trying to get that product finally to market. It was supposed to go to Europe. It was supposed to have IRS, and you had to re-engineer that car and get it there on time and get it. I mean, there was a big, big push for that car because it was the rebirth of Mustang. And I remember you and I talking about it, how some people would call it, what do they call it, Mike? The retro Mustang?
Yeah.
I hate that because the same year that Hau launched that S197, the Porsche 911 was redesigned. And what did it look like? An S197? No.
But John, I wouldn't be sitting here today without the S197.
Well, and Hau, we have to tell you this, both Mike and I, because of that car, there's something about that car, we both bought one.
That's what got me in the hobby.
Yeah, we both have one because of what you did, Hau. So you owe us some money.
That's awesome.
No, you don't. So before we get to that, for those of you who are not well-versed on how this incredible story of Hau Thai-Tang, growing up in Saigon and seeing his Mustang for the first time, how this should be a Hollywood movie. Forget the faster horse. No, don't forget that. But that was great, too, and having you in that was great. But how the entire Mustang world unfolded to your eyes as a young man has got to be retold. Please take us back to that time for your first exposure to the Mustang and how that brought you to America and got you this incredible dream job.
Yeah, John, it's a great story. So most of your listeners are familiar with the Vietnam War, which I was born in Vietnam in Saigon. My father was a teacher. He was also serving in the South Vietnamese Army, who was supported by the U.S. military during the conflict with the North Vietnamese. And there was a gentleman named Al Ekstrand. He was a worked at Ford at one time, went on to Chrysler. He was a lawyer by training, and he was doing a tour in concert with the USO to really help build morale for the troops in the Southeast Asian um, venues where the U.S. military was. So it was places like Okinawa, the Philippines, in South Vietnam, and he brought over some late '60s, early '70s vintage Mustangs that were souped up drag cars, and it was just there to really boost morale of the troops, but also to promote safety. He was noticing that a lot of the troops, when they returned to the U.S., many of them, you know, um, lost their lives actually not to the war, but to driving, reckless driving. So
Yep.
he was trying to promote things like seatbelts and
Oh,
those types of things. So it was in one of his stops that I got to see these cars when I was a kid, probably eight or so years old at the time,
wow.
and it was so incredible because there was nothing like it in Vietnam, right? We were a relatively poor country, a former French colony, so we had cars, but they were very small. Like
Yeah.
my father had a Citroen de Chevaux.
Oh, wow.
I remember
Yeah.
it had a crank start on it. It was one of the early ones.
Wow.
Um, so to see a Mustang was something that left a lasting memory for me, and why it really stood out was it embodied everything as a kid in Vietnam you thought of America. It was big, it was powerful. You pictured wide open spaces
Yeah.
and this car just driving, on in those vast spaces. And you know, never would I have thought that when the war ended, our family was evacuated. My mother had worked for Chase Manhattan Bank. We were evacuated during the fall of Saigon. We relocated to the U.S. through initially Guam and then Camp Pendleton and just north of San Diego, and then settled in New York City. I grew up in the New York City public school system.
Wow.
Went to university, joined Ford right out of school, and later on had a chance to work on the Mustang. So it's a great story.
Oh, it's just Mike. That I don't care. We got to get a producer, and how you're gonna have to sit down with a producer. We're gonna have to make that story. We're just gonna have to,
Need a
because
movie out of it. Yeah, yeah.
how you couldn't find someone to write a better story. And the question that everybody always asks when we tell people about you was, what was it? So when you come here, was it a drive for you wanted to do engineering? Did you actually have a goal to work at Ford? And if you did work at Ford, there's no guarantee when you're at that huge company, even as an engineer, a good engineer, that
Yeah.
you can somehow gravitate to Mustang. Was that all part of your plan, or did it just work out that way?
It worked out that way, though. That was never an explicit goal. I went to, like a lot of immigrants and Asian kids, we defaulted to math and science because it was kind of the equalizer, right? You didn't have to have great English proficiency as a kid, but you could do well in math. So I did well in math and science. When I graduated from school, I went to engineering school at Carnegie Mellon, and then I joined Ford right out of school because um, I was attracted to the auto industry. It was a product that was obviously, it spanned the spectrum of being a commodity, a
Yeah.
mode of transportation that gets you from point A to point B. And there are people that think about cars that way. And then you have the other extreme products like Mustang and Bronco that you guys are, helping to promote, that are, almost a mystical self-expression of who you are, right? You have people that have the prancing pony tattooed on their bodies, and it just
Oh yeah.
shows you
Oh
what it
yeah.
means to them, and everything in between. And that really was something that was very intriguing to me coming out of school. And then, it's a super hyper competitive industry. You have to constantly innovate if you want to do well in the marketplace. It's a tough business, but there's a great brotherhood camaraderie. I have friends that have worked for the other car companies, have made friends like you guys have over the years. You know, and that really, was fascinating for me. And then the last part is it's a product that you can take home and share with your friends and family, right? I
Yeah.
used to joke like you could work for NASA, that the likelihood that they're going to let you fly the space shuttle, and bring your wife and kids along are pretty slim. But you could take home a Mustang, and take your wife and kids out for a joyride and cruise up and down Woodward, right? That's something that's very unique about our industry, and was something that was very attractive for me.
That was
Well,
the billboard on the side of Flat Rock. You can take
Yeah,
your work home with us. Yeah.
yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. And as a chief engineer of Mustang, and Mike has been adamant that every time we can reach out and find a chief engineer or a marketing guy at Mustang, that he come and speak to the club, because you guys bring a richness to the Mustang heritage that we just can't. As close as we can be to the program, Mike's work on the program and my work at SVT, it's not the same as you, How. And that's why a lot of them, we knew that S197 was going to be special. And but we also now, all these years later, heard of all the challenges you guys had to try to pick that project and get it across the finish line and get it to market. And by God, when it came out, that talk about a shot in the arm for the entire Mustang brand. Just looking at it, I knew so many guys that had a 66, Mike, and they saw the S197. They went out and bought the same color in the S197 and drove that to your show instead
Yeah.
of the 66. How did you know that when you were working on that project that this was going to be that big?
Well, we had hopes that it would be that big, John. As you guys know, you're steep in rich history of Mustang. That S197 was the fifth generation of the vehicle. So, you do one kind of every 10 years or so, maybe a little bit less than that, depending on which cycle you're talking about. So it was it was kind of a rare opportunity, maybe a once in a career opportunity. You have a chance to work on something that's all new in terms of, a relatively new sheet of paper platform. Um, so we knew that we had a chance to do something really special. Mustang is the type of program that attracts the best and brightest within the company. It self-selects. You get
Yeah,
the most talented designers, the best engineers, the best, development drivers. They all want to work on Mustang. So we had a really special team. And then, as you hinted at, it's a tough program because what makes Mustang special, and what you mentioned Art Hyde, who led the first half of the program, and I worked for Art on the prior generation Mustang, the 93 Mustang, and then we did Bullet and some of those on the last run of the SM95 platform. Art preached into me, what was special about Mustang was fast, fun, and affordable.
yep,
And you had to find that intersection of that Venn diagram. It had to be, great performance vehicle. It had to look good, and then obviously it had to be affordable. And we had to have that, entry product below a $20,000 price point,
yeah,
MSRP, and then you walk it all the way up to an SVT version. Eventually, we would do, a Shelby version or a convertible version of that. That walked almost up to, close to 100,000 when you start looking at the people like the Celines and folks aftermarket that would soup these things up, right? So to have a platform that can do that bandwidth in terms of not only revenue coverage but performance
right.
is really hard to do. It's a tough engineering challenge because it has to be good enough to command that higher end of the pricing in terms of credible performance, but at the same time, you have to make money with the entry
That's
vehicle,
right.
and
Right.
yeah,
Right. You
that's
can't
tough
be
to
a
do.
loss leader. But it
Yeah,
was like the original Mustang that Gail Halderman drew. It was the car, it wasn't so much that it was retro. It was just pure Mustang. It was what we, you could take, I think one of your guys had said that they took all the badges off the car and clinicked it in California and they knew it was a Mustang. It's got
Yeah.
that shape like a Coke bottle. That's a Coke
yeah,
bottle. You don't have to have Coca-Cola on it. It's just that iconic Mustang shape with the long hood and the short deck. And how, when that thing came out, oh my gosh, I mean, it just changed the way people perceived Mustang, and it refreshed Even the steps we made through SN95 and Mike, I'm going to share with you, and I hope how you remember this. My favorite story of Hau Thai-Tang was I didn't know you, and a lot of people didn't know you when we were doing that big immersion with all the creative teams and the PR teams and all the advertisers over at Campbell, where Dave Scheinberg, we did an overview of Mustang. We were trying to do an immersion in the product. So a lot of people that were coming onto the brand team, you had just brought the car to market, and you had a presentation right after me, I think. And I remember you coming up there, and a lot of people, I said, "Is that Hau Thai-Tang? Is that?" And they go, "Yeah, he's the chief engineer." And Mike, you wouldn't believe this, but this is what separates Hau Thai-Tang from all the other guys that we've ever met to do Mustang. He got up there and he said, I'll forgive me for paraphrasing this, Hal, but you said, "A lot of you who don't know who I am, so let me just put it this way." And you stood back and you did she bang, she bang. You did a William Hung imitation, and you brought the house down. And you said, "No, that's not me. I'm Hau Thai-Tang, chief engineer." I've never, they, that people laugh from their souls. And you completely put ease into that room and then talked about Mustang from a passionate point of view and how it changed the whole immersion that day. I remember, and I don't know if you recall that, but
I remember that.
do you really?
Yeah, yeah, I
How
remember that. Yep.
no
Yeah.
one, I've been at Ford 26 years, and no one has ever done something that cool to make you just completely won everybody over with, you could have said, "Hey, I'm Hau Tai-Tang," and you're not. But you didn't. And for that,
That was yeah.
what gave you that
That was
idea?
before they invented memes, right? That William Hung became a meme. That
Yeah,
was before meme was a thing. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was great. But how that to me showed that you understood this was an everyman's car, and from that moment forward, that's why I ask you. One of the famous things you said to me, and I think you put it in the forward of my Mustang Dynasty book when you wrote that forward. You said the best thing about, I think one of my questions was, "What's the best thing about being on the Mustang program?" And you said, and everybody's stolen it since you've left. Everyone steals it. It's the best thing about being on the Mustang program is that everyone knows what a Mustang is. And the worst thing about being on the Mustang program is that everyone knows what a Mustang is.
True,
And they're not
true,
afraid to
true.
tell you. They're not afraid to tell you.
And they're
Yep.
not afraid to tell you. That was it. That was the zinger at the end. And that turned out to be true when you worked on the car.
Yeah. I think I'm sure if you talk to any of the Mustang, chief engineers, Parasac, they'll all tell you the same thing. It's a huge burden. It's a great honor to be entrusted with one of the icons, not only for Ford but in the auto industry, right? It's the second longest running continuous nameplate, I think,
Yeah.
after Corvette. Um, but it's a huge responsibility, not only for the company but for all the fans, all the Mustang enthusiasts, and you don't want to let them down because they all expect a lot.
Well, Mike, do you remember the first time when you met Howe and saw him at a program? Because I remember after this program, I was really excited to be working with Team Mustang and your work on the Mustang, Howe. But I got a note from a club. I think it was North Central Club of PA, and how you ran out to, it was a launch event somewhere near Pittsburgh, and these club members got to meet you at a meet and greet, and they came away with that same, and I didn't prompt them and didn't tell them anything about you, but when they came and they called me and said, "John, this Hau Tai-Tang was so engaging and so much fun." He's like, and one of the guys that had, I think, 6 Mustangs, he looked at me and he gave me those eyes. He said, "You know what? He's one of us." And I felt that same engagement level that you had with the immersion folks, you have with the owners. Is there some reason? I mean, did you get involved at the club side? How did you get so tied to that enthusiast section? And don't tell me it was your time doing racing. Didn't you work for Newman Haas for a while?
Yeah. Yeah, I did earlier in my career. I think it was really working on Mustang with Art. Art was a huge advocate for the Mustang Club of America. I think he served on the board of the
Yeah,
Mustang
that's right.
Club of
Yeah.
America with Austin Craig, and I was the vehicle engineering manager working for Art um, on the prior generation Mustang. So that was really my first introduction to Mustang, And working with Art, he really reinforced to the whole team, me included, the importance of the Mustang clubs and the enthusiasts and how they were basically the foundation of the Mustang brand, right? And Art used to preach that we're not just competing with Camaro, we're competing with that, lake house. We're competing with that speedboat. We're competing with that taking
Yeah.
the family to Disney. This is an emotional purchase, and
Yeah.
people have other uses for their money, and you have to win their hearts and minds of why they want a Mustang, and I that was really something that he impressed on all of us, and it really was something that I appreciated from him.
Well, when you got into product development, Mike Ray did not enamor himself with the next Mustang chief engineer because his first meeting with, and Mike, I hate to keep bringing this story up on the podcast,
Hilarious.
but how you survived, Mike, making friends with Mustang chief engineers after saying the things you did to Dave Parasak. Why don't you tell how what you did to him?
So how Dave and the team, I didn't know Dave yet at the time, and we were invited by Ford and our board of directors of the Mustang Club to come out and see the new refresh on the 2010 before it launched. So we went out to Flat Rock and got in and went over it all, seen the new Shelby and everything. And I was walking around the car, and a gentleman asked me, "What do you think of the car?" And I was standing in the back, and I said, "I really don't like the taillights." I said they kind of look like a Honda to me, and he said, "How you doing? I'm Dave Parasak, Chief Engineer, Mustang." That's how I met Dave.
Nice guy. Yeah. Chief, head of the
But
biggest
in
Mustang,
2013, they changed the taillights.
chief engineer of the Mustang. And he goes, "Oh, hi, I'm Dave Parasak." So how did you get a lot of that? Did you hear, were there detractors when you're on that program? Did you get any of that stuff from the enthusiast base?
Yeah, obviously, the most controversial decision was taking the IRS out, and that got a lot of debate, And John, you and Mike know the story, you were a part of it, but um, the your listeners may not know, but the S197 Mustang did not get approved when it sort of went to program approval. So, the entire sort of life gestation period for a new product, when you're starting with an all new platform, it is roughly 4 years, give or take a few months, depending on the scale of the program. And you work for the first half of the program, the first 2 years, it's all about understanding the customer requirements and the customer wants,
Okay.
and then trying to come up with a set of design assumptions that not only satisfies the customer requirements, but also meets all the business objectives.
Oh, sure.
And we had a very tough cost target. So tough that 2005 we launched it, or 2004.
Yeah.
It's now 2024. So what is that? 20,
20 years.
20
Over,
years later?
yeah, 20
Yeah.
years.
I still remember the cost target, 12,560.
Oh,
That
my.
was the
Wow.
Burned
that
in
was
you.
the seared into my brain. I mean, like that number. I may not remember my wedding anniversary, but I remember the material cost target for the
That's
S197.
great.
I'm telling Jenny. Oh, God.
12,560.
That's a lot.
And that's the average cost. So that's you take it's basically 65% V6 and 35% GTs, and
Mhm.
you do a harmonic average, and the cost had to be 12,560. And
Wow.
anyways, Art was trying to really deliver on the performance thesis, and we couldn't get it. They couldn't get the program in the box, and it didn't get approved. And when I got on the program, I was basically told, you have one more shot to get this program approved, and if you can't get it to box, we're going to cancel it. We're not going to do it. We'll just do a refresh. And we needed to find about $100 in material costs. Now, you guys may not think your listening base may not think that's a big deal. $100 out of $12,000, but on these product programs, you would sell your firstborn for $5 cost save, right? I mean,
Oh,
Yeah.
God,
to
yeah.
find $100, that's a big deal. So we needed to make a substantial change, and the only sort of discretionary item that we looked at was going back to the solid rear axle. And
Yep.
there are a lot of people that have very strong beliefs about both architectures, and you can make a compelling case for, a solid axle. It has, perfect camber all the time. It has obviously a lot of ability to handle the torque, easy customization in terms of different axle ratios. And the aftermarket, obviously great for drag racing. And there are some downfalls as well in terms of vehicle dynamics. And so that was probably the one decision that there was a lot of debate about in the public eye. Yeah.
Mike, you have to admit, when Hau had to face that, and he had to be the guy to make that decision, but he had to get the program out. And I remember Team Mustang coming to SVT meetings and sitting down with us and trying to get cost out, just to illustrate Hau's point. One of the guys, and this bean counter was so bad, Hau, that I looked down on the floor and he had holes in his socks. I'm not making this up, Hau. I'm a realist, but the guy had holes in his socks, so I was afraid of him. He actually asked if we could take the flocking out of the inside of the console, because they added flocking to keep the noise and the rattling around of the pennies and all that. You want to take that out and then get rid of the nice valve covers because it's under the hood. Who's going to look at that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
He's never been to a Mustang show. Yep.
well, that's
great.
another question. Mike Ray spent his last, Mike, 30 years? I mean, Mustang shows are his life. And that's the engagement part. Having you come out and the chief engineers come out, and there's too many marketing people that don't come to a car show and understand that dynamic. And that's why we appreciate you so much, because you did listen to people, and their stories, they're not like yours. They're just pretty boring sometimes. But to listen to that and to say, well, there's some things I have to do with Mustang, and to engage with them, it makes a huge difference. How, and everyone who's got to meet you over your time on the Mustang program, even after that, when you got to SVT, appreciates that about you. And I want you to know that, because we still have people talking about you, and your influence on Mustang, and how when they met you, you really influenced them. So thank you for being a regular guy.
Yeah, John, that's when I met Hal the first time, was at Dearborn Country Club. I think it was something with SVT we were doing, right?
Yeah, we brought Neil Ressler out. Remember, we did a little anniversary, and we had some of the engineers, and Hal got up to speak, and I was really curious about that, Hal, because John Coletti was a character and probably the hardest boss I ever worked for, but he was just a one of those bigger than life guys. And when you came into SVT, the cool thing about you didn't try to be anybody else but you. You understood what SVT had to be, and it was really hard to explain it. That at least how in our marketing managers, we didn't want to sell 80,000 of these. We wanted to sell just one fewer than people wanted. We wanted not to be on every street corner. We wanted it was the special vehicle team. It wasn't everybody's Mustang. It was just the Cobra. And when you walked in, the big relief for all of us on the team, at least on the marketing side, was we knew that you got it. And Mike, that to me was the most important thing, because there were too many people, even higher ups at Ford at that time when Hau took over, that didn't get that. They didn't sell more of them. They just couldn't understand, because Hau, remember, one of the mantras at Ford was, it's all about market share.
Yep.
It's all about
No,
share.
scarcity is part of what makes it special, obviously, and it's something you have to balance, and you don't do those cars to gain market share, right? It's a halo product, and like you said, you want to have one fewer than the natural demand. That's ideal. Yep.
How well did you know Neil Ressler?
Oh, a huge, mentor of mine. You mentioned the opportunity I had to go work in Indy cars. Neil was the sponsor for that.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay.
yeah, he was a huge racing fan. In fact, he went on to consult for CART, after he retired from Ford. But he started this program called Motorsports Technology Exchange Program, where we would take a couple of engineers every year and send them to work in motorsports, with the goal of you really learning in a fast-paced environment and then bringing those learnings back to the production side of the business. So when I went to Newman Haas, he was the executive champion for that, and he was always a big supporter for me afterwards. And funny story, when when I got married in '95. I did the Newman Haas thing in '93, and my wife and I decided for our honeymoon we would drive down the coast of California. So we started in Napa and went all the way down
Yeah.
over the span of 10 days to. We ended up in San Diego, but along the way, coincidentally, there was an IndyCar race at Laguna Seca, and just happened
No,
just
no, you
happened to
did.
fall.
No, you
And Neil Rustler got us tickets to go to the race and hang out in the Ford Motorsports trailer, and so that was always the big joke. Was I took my wife to the IndyCar race at Laguna Seca for our honeymoon, thanks to
did.
Neil.
And you're still married. Mike, he's
Still
still
married.
married. That's the joy of that, Well, Mike, remember when we got a chance to see Hal get promoted up the ladder and become vice president? And there's nothing, when Neil was a vice president, we knew he was a car guy. It was nothing greater than for Mike and I to see you, Hal, get up there. And because we knew that, the enthusiast voice would be heard. And from everybody who's known you and maybe not known you, but known your impact on Ford, we just want to thank you from everybody listening on the Mustang Owners Podcast. I'm sure feels the same way, for all your contributions, not just to Ford Motor Company, but more specifically to Mustang, and what you've done for us over the year just can't be repaid. Thank you so much.
No, thank you guys. It's a huge honor to be connected to Mustang, and one of the best things was seeing. We talked about Parasec, seeing him lead the S6, 550 program,
Right.
and you kind of know that I loved the 2005 Mustang. I thought it was great, but the 2015 Mustang was better in every way, right? So, by all measures, maybe not sales volume,
Yeah.
but he did a great job, and it was great to sort of have the opportunity to, I'll say, work on that program at a different level, but to support Dave and the team and watch him go through the same sort of balance, trying to optimization, I guess I'll call it, between the business objectives and all of the technical and performance requirements. And I thought he and the team did a great job with that product.
And yet somehow Mike Ray got them to make a Hollywood movie about the Dave Parasec story on the S550, a faster horse. Good job on that, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, Hal, again, thank you again very much. We appreciate your time with us, and let's bring you back. And we got so many stories we want to talk to you about. And again, we can't thank you enough for joining us here on the Mustang Owners Podcast.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Mike. Lovely opportunity. Keep up the great work.
We will try. That's a wrap again for this edition of the Mustang Owners Podcast. But don't forget to check out the enthusiast section of FordPerformance.com this week. And if you haven't already done so, get your Mustang Club or Facebook group registered on FordPerformanceClubConnect.com. And really, you can register all of your Mustangs on the Ford Special Vehicle Registry.com. And if you want to know what Mike's Mega Club is up to, check them out at Moxum.com. And we welcome your comments and suggestions. Just send them to us at clubhub@ford.com. So until next time, we'll be looking to catch you down the road.